This is the Adoptive Mom Podcast. Adoption may look different for each family, but we need solidarity from other crazy people who took this leap. And that is what we do here. We encourage, we build up, we share the wins and losses. We lean on each other, and we get through this together. Thanks for joining us. Hey, welcome to episode 8 of the Adoptive Mom Podcast. I am so excited that you're listening, and I am so thankful for all the support I've gotten so far for this podcast. And thank you again to all the wise adoptive mamas that have been featured on this podcast. This wouldn't exist without you guys, and I'm so thankful for your wisdom and your willingness to open up and have chats with me. I wanted to take a minute and actually read some of the reviews I've gotten on iTunes, and thank you guys for them. So we have one here from Chris2338. She says, Alex is not just the host, she is also an adoptive mom, and her perspective and insight make this podcast an excellent resource for those of us in the trenches with her. Her first interview was amazing. That was with Ann Mythaler. And I can't wait to see where else this podcast takes us. Thank you so much, Chris. And let's see, I think it says Shio, S-H-I-O, 1982 says, love the different perspectives and honesty. Brittany Watley says, can't wait for Mondays now. Love the truth in these snippets. And I'll read more next week, but I just wanted to thank you guys so much for the insight and encourage anyone else. If you haven't yet, I would just so appreciate it if you would take a few minutes to go over to iTunes and rate and review this podcast. It'll help us rise up in the ranks and get into more ears that need to hear it. Today, I have such a special treat for you guys. We get to hear from another international adoptive mama, and her name is Mandi Morgan. She and her family have been full-time missionaries to multiple countries and have adopted 3 children along the way, and that's in addition to their 3 biological children. We got to chat about attachment with your adopted kids from other countries, all the fun logistics that go along with international adoptions, and since they are a white family and they have adopted from both China and Haiti, we got to talk a little bit about adoption and race. It was such an eye-opening interview, and I'm so grateful that she was able to chat with me. I did things a little bit differently this time. Usually I like to pick a topic that they are an expert in and hone in on that, but Mandi was just able to share wisdom on so many different facets of international adoption, and I hope you enjoy her interview as much as I did. So on that note, let's jump right in to my chat with Mandi Morgan. All right. Hi, Mandi. How's it going?
Hi, Alex. Going well.
Going well. You're talking to us from Kenya, which is super exciting.
Yep.
Okay, so tell everyone a little bit about yourselves, just how many kids you have, husband info, what you guys are doing in Kenya, etc.
See, we've been married for 19 years. We have 6 kids. First 3 are biological, and they are 17, almost 16, and 14, and then the last 3 are adopted, and they are 12, 8, and 6.
Goodness, I cannot believe Luck and Liv are that old now.
I know, me either.
Oh my goodness. When you guys were in Arkansas, it was like, they were so tiny.
They were.
Oh my
If you
goodness.
saw them now, you'd think Livy was 12, though. She talks like a teen. So.
Oh goodness, I bet having 2 older sisters doesn't help with that.
Right.
So you guys have 3 boys, 3 girls, keeping it even, right?
Mm-hmm.
Has that worked out well for y'all?
Yes, I think it's been really great. We've, we're in the process of moving again.
I didn't know that.
Well, it's literally as of last week, the decision was made. So that's a new thing, and that'll be new for everybody, but it'll be the first time we'll have really mixing up. We've had the older boys share a room, the middle girls, and then the littles, and we call them the littles. Look, and they're the 8 and 6-year-old. But being a boy and girl, we've known that grouping isn't going to work very long. And so, in this next move, it's the first time we're going to have a junior in high school room with a 2nd grader. So that'll be interesting.
It'll teach him patience. It's good for the soul, right?
Right. It's great for teens to have that accountability too. So my husband's fine with that.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about you've had a couple different adoptions. So let's jump into that story. Just what got you into this, and then what made you do it twice? So all of that stuff.
Okay, well, honestly, I have always wanted to adopt since I was little, and this was something I made known to my husband very early on. I don't know if it's just not really having a father around. I don't know what it is, but that's where God put my heart, was just every child needs a family and needs to feel like they belong. And that was a big thing for me, and just always wanted to do it. But through the process, getting married, my husband knew this was kind of there, but it wasn't really a passion given to him right away, as it usually goes. You know, this is something I've found over and over to be true, that adoption often is laid on the wife's heart first, and, you know, lots of prayer. And, you know, if this is meant to be, the husband will come around. God will speak to your husband as well. But that's kind of how it was. And we knew that we had to be, when we moved to China, we thought, well, we're in China. We knew this was going to happen someday. So we have to wait till we're 30, because we're not quite old enough to adopt in China. And so we had a few babies along the way. And I think it was a sermon in China, actually, that my husband listened to. He's a big fan of John Piper. And he did a sermon on adoption and kind of what turned him around to adopting. His youngest daughter is adopted. And same thing. It was kind of something on his wife's heart forever. And he didn't quite know what to do with that. And then God pretty strongly showed him how we are all adopted. And, you know, if we're true followers of Jesus and what his heart was, well, that's obvious. His heart was for adoption. So logically, in a man's mind, it was easy to see, oh, well, logically, we should be doing that too. And that was it. That opened the door. And he was totally on board and excited about it. So that's how the first one came about. So moving forward, after we finally got our sweet Millie, she was 2 years old. And she had never seen a male in her entire life.
Wow.
So, so she was very afraid of my husband. I mean,
well, and he's not a small person, so.
No, he's a big burly. I would be afraid too. She's used to these little Chinese women, and at the time, he also had this monster beard, and he does scary with this beard. But so she couldn't even make eye contact with him. It wasn't a normal fear. It was pure trauma, just terror. And so she clung to me, and that was it. I was her safety. And it was a long time before I felt like this child maybe actually feels love for me, you know, because it was just a clinging out of just sheer fear of everything else. She wanted my undivided attention, needed me to talk to her, listen to her, look at her, hold her all the time. Wherever I was, she was. And so, you know, that's exhausting. And I had 3 other children, and we thought it'd be fabulous if that first year when she came home, we decided to homeschool so they could all just bond, and it'd be awesome. So that was funny year that no one learned anything. And I did a lot of crying, But, you know, years pass and things got better, and my husband was great about dealing with that rejection. And, of course, now she's got him wrapped around her finger, and they're very close, and it's sweet to see. But anyways, moving forward, when she was about 4.5, was when we were finishing up in China. We'd been there for almost 10 years, and we were passing over things to local Chinese, which was kind of the goal. And we were going to start this whole thing over again in South America, somewhere in Central America. So we were in America, just on a quick visit with family, in the process of moving to Costa Rica. And so it'd be the first move that our family had made, because they'd all lived in China. And I remember during this time, car trips were kind of the one time I could ever read a book. So I loved car trips because all my babies were strapped in, and I could read. And so I had several books lined that we were going to read that summer while we were traveling around visiting family. None of them had anything to do with adoption whatsoever. But of course, after each book, Casey would look over at me from the driver's seat and just know that I was just bawling, be like, I know what it is. I know what it is. I'm like, I know. It's just, these books have nothing to do with adoption, but at the end of them, God is just pounding it on me that this is where my heart goes. This is what we're supposed to do. I know we're supposed to adopt again. And I thought, he is going to think I'm crazy. And we are about to make the biggest move of our life. And, I looked back at my kids sitting there about to make the biggest move of their life. I thought of Millie, my one from China, who had finally found her place as the youngest and the only adopted. And she was dead set against not having any other kids with those characteristics in our family. She would be the only one. So she was not for it. So we just said, and I'll tell you what my husband said, which was really, really confirming to me. I thought he was going to be like, you're crazy. We have no money. We're about to make this huge move. You know what a huge emotional thing this is. This is not good timing. But instead he was like, well, okay.
Wow.
And he just said, I found that, through all this, yes, it's hard and we are never prepared, but you have to admit we felt so close to God through all that because we could not control anything. We couldn't control, especially with international adoptions, places like Haiti, things like that. Up until the last minute when you're on the plane going home, you do not have confirmation that everything's going to work out and you're ever going to adopt this child. It's ever going to happen, Yeah. And so it's a scary thing. But we just, it's addictive to feel so close to God during those times because we had to give up control and had to see him do beautiful things. So that was an easy yes from him that second time around. And but we knew that we were not in a good stage of life to take this on. So we just said, we have to do something. Let's pray this week. God, we're just going to open our hands completely. You know where we are. You know our hearts. You know we don't have the finances or the bandwidth, the emotional energy, the time, anything right now during this move to do this. But we hear you. We know you're doing something. So we're just going to keep our eyes open, and we promise we're going to put our yes on the table. Any hint of adoption that comes around, we will pursue it. So I didn't go out looking for adoption agencies or do anything, really. We moved to Costa Rica. About a month in, the only other American I'd met was a missionary, and she comes to me out of the blue, says, Mandi, I need you to pray with me. I don't know what to do. My husband, he works with IFRI, and he had an office over in Haiti. And whenever he goes, there's an orphanage, kind of on the side of the office. And she went 3 years before this with him. And, of course, they always hang out with the kids and just play around and visit the orphanage when they go. And this little girl had really bonded with her. Her name was Jenny, and she was 3 at the time. So she said, the director of that orphanage just called. I haven't been there in 3 years. She called me out of the blue and said, do you remember that little girl, Jenny? She's 6 now. All of her living relatives are now dead, and she's adoptable. We think you're the one that's supposed to adopt her. And my friend was like, I don't know what to do. I'm 55. I've had 5 kids that I've raised them all. They're all out of the house. But I have to pray about this. I have to be, open. Will you pray about with me? I said, of course. I didn't tell her any of my story or where we were, but immediately sparks go off in my mind like, oh, is this it, God? Oh, no. I thought it was going to be siblings. That would work out better. And someone not close to Millie's age, that would work out better. But but I said I would be open, so I have to be open. So I didn't say that we were looking toward that or anything, but I was praying hard too. So anyway, she comes back a week later and it's like, I feel a total peace about not adopting this little girl. All my children have been praying with me. Nobody feels a peace about taking her in. I think we're doing the right thing, but I cannot shake the feeling that you're supposed to look into this. She looked directly at me, and I just thought, dang, that's it. Dang it. So, of course, we said, we have to do this. So I called that week after lots of prayer and talked to the director and still just feeling like, what in the world is happening? This little girl would be a year older than my youngest. That is so not what we were thinking. So but we called, and she said, you know what? This was the strangest thing. Out of the blue, Jenny had an uncle that's still living, and they came down and took her, and she's not here with us anymore. But we have these 10 kids, and she threw out pictures on email, like instantly. 10 pictures of 10 kids. I couldn't believe it. And she said, but will you take one of these? Pick one. No, this is almost even worse. How do you pick a face? You can't pick a face.
Yeah.
I know God wants. So I just said, we need some time to think about it. I don't even know how to answer this. Do any of them have siblings? Nope, none of them had siblings. Okay, well, God, this isn't anything like we thought, but we're just going to keep pursuing this. So a week goes by. I'm still we're rolling over who to pick and how to even try to pick. And I called again to get some more questions answered. And she was like, you know what? One of those kids that you were interested in, his name is Luxon. We have never met his birth mom. And she showed up at the gate last week. And it was the craziest thing. She's totally pregnant, about to have a baby, and wants to leave it here. But the mom is crippled. Will you take it? And we just said, okay, that's it. That's everything that we kind of thought God was leading toward. We've got to say yes. We thought it'd be siblings. We thought it would be, younger than Millie. We thought if there was a female, that one wouldn't be too close in age to Millie. So it's a boy and then a girl. What's the youngest that was going to be born? Actually, we didn't know that it was going to be a girl at the time. We just knew it was going to be siblings. So we said yes. And so that's how we started that process. And that was a long and tough one. It took about 2 years. And yes. And some of the people that we started with, actually, it took them 4 years. People that we'd met in the process that started at the same time at that same place. So it was tough. And it was one of those things, even down to the last minute, that you're still thinking. When we actually came to get them, we get to the American embassy thinking we're home free. We're getting on our flight home tomorrow. We've got both our kids. It's been 2 years. It's finally happening. And at the American embassy, they said, okay, well, you can take Luxon tomorrow on the plane with you, but no, you could take Livy, the baby, but you need to go drive Luxon back to the orphanage 3 hours away. We've found an error in his birth certificate. It's fake.
Oh, my gosh.
This was so last minute after it had been through so much paperwork. The paperwork.
Yes.
So, anywho, that's how all that went. But lo and behold, everything worked out, and we were on a plane the next day with both kids.
Oh, good.
So, yes, it all worked out.
Well,
but,
and I remember whenever you guys were on furlough here and you were living in Arkansas, and you would go and visit them even before you could adopt them. Yes. I think that was really helpful. It was hard, but because legally they become yours right away, but you can't take them out of the country. So when we were on land in Haiti, they had to be ours. They couldn't eat the food. We had to bring their diapers, their food. We had to bring a tent and stay with them in the tent. So, wow.
Are you there? Yeah. So it was an interesting thing, but I really do think it was really helpful to have some kind of connection with them before they came home and to be able to, bring pictures and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think helped them kind of feel at home. And I even brought my daughter. One of the trips, I didn't go with Casey. I went by myself once, and I went with Emma once, and she was, I think, 11 at the time, so that she could meet them and see what their life was like. So she has a connection, kind of what their life was like. So I think that was really helpful. As hard as it was, it was a good thing.
Yeah, I imagine it was really hard to leave, but
yes,
it
was. I tell you, the first time I left, bawling, screaming, crying. But by the last trip, it was like no more tears. It was just like, okay, there's that person that comes sometimes and leaves again, that leaves for, half a year. So that was harder. It was harder when they stopped crying. Just like, that's just my life. People come in and out,
Oh, goodness. Well, yeah. And I imagine there's some, some semblance of like, is this actually ever going to happen for them?
Right. And they were too young to understand. what was going to happen anyways. It's just this random lady that comes and puts me in a tent with her for a week every couple months. So
brings us a few things, and then
the snack lady, we get to eat when she comes.
That's awesome. Okay, so that kind of brings us to the end of your adoption story. I remember when you brought them home, and it was just so awesome. And I feel so blessed. I mean, we all feel so blessed that got to happen when you were on furlough. So we got to see them and see their homecoming, and that was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've kind of talked about some of the international adoption stuff. So you did it with 2 different countries, and I imagine it was 2 vastly different processes. Although, with, like you said, that with every adoption, there's just the mountain of paperwork that you have to fill out and all the hoops you have to jump through. But what was the biggest difference between Haiti and China?
There was a lot of differences, but I think with China, it was more, poor China. I feel bad because they really are trying to do this well, and there's just not enough people because they need, it's kind of a volunteer job. There's just not enough people to work in the system. So that's why adoptions take so many years and so long. But they are organized and they are official, and you feel safer with that. I know that it's going to happen, I think. Whereas countries like Haiti, where, like I said, Lux and Livy probably never had an actual, when they were born, it was written on a napkin somewhere. There's not a lot of official real things to work with. So a lot of corruption can happen. It's just a much iffier thing.
Yeah.
So, I think maybe that was the biggest difference. One, we didn't ever see Millie till the day we got her home. And the other 2 we got to see along the way, which was awesome, but we also never knew if we'd ever get to take them home.
Yeah.
Where we knew we'd take her home one day.
So and this was post natural disaster Haiti, right?
Yes.
So did that affect the adoption process at all?
No, supposedly the earthquake had kind of given some people that were in the pipeline, that was a couple years before, they had just let a lot of them out, and they sped up a lot of things. But they were all back to craziness by the time we were in the adoption pipeline.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So probably even more of a mess.
Oh, goodness. Okay. So, international adoption, I know that, in this podcast, we've focused a lot on domestic adoption. So I know that I have a lot of listeners, and I've actually gotten texts and emails they're like, please tell me you're going to have someone on that's done international adoption. So what would you say about just patience in those situations, and how would you encourage these people who are about to wade into this water, and you're I know that you're you don't know what you're about to get into, but what would you say to them kind of in a nutshell?
Well, I know that's a lot. It's true with other countries too that are kind of like Haiti, but it's helpful, I've found, to be, there's Facebook groups of people that are waiting, because then you get the most up-to-date information. Hey, I heard, IBS is doing this. There's going to have a big load coming through. You hear what other people are going through, and it gives you assurance that, okay, things are moving or things aren't moving, and all these people are feeling it too. Because a lot of times you just don't feel like what's going on, on their side of things. So being a part of a group that's in it, that's kind of in the same process as you, is helpful. What was the question again?
No, you're totally fine. It's there's so many details with this adoption thing that I feel like it's so easy to get just lost in the explanation, right, or the just everything. No, I was just asking about, we've had a lot of people contact me about international adoption, and just hoping that they can hear from someone who's been through it. So I was just asking what you would say to those people. So that's great. Just getting that support and
support. Pass the time by finding ways to make money that you feel like is, going towards your adoption. I know that was something people did just to help them pass the time and feel like they're being proactive, because a lot of the waiting, you just feel like it's totally out of your control. It's out of your hands. You've done everything you can, and now you just have to let it be and hope that, the country responds and things happen, and you can't really control anything once you do your part. So, a lot of people will sell T-shirts, do things that they feel like, I'm doing something, I'm helping the orphanage, we're raising money toward that. You feel like you're proactive in the process instead of just dying, twiddling your thumbs, waiting.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I imagine that process is not good for anyone dealing with anxiety. So finding some distraction is probably a really, really good advice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about it, just that we've said, 2 different countries, 2 different races, and you guys are Caucasian. So you've got a lot of racial mixing going on in your house. Let's talk about that a little bit. And I have a funny story actually to start us off, because we've taken pictures of you guys. And at one point we were taking pictures of all the kids and they were all holding hands, and Casey said to us, like, hold on, we need to spread out the whites a little bit more. And that was just the funniest thing to me. And so you guys obviously have a sense of humor about it. And I know that your kids probably don't, feel a lot of difference within your home. But what are some experiences you guys have had with a multiracial family?
Yeah, it's been fun that we've lived in a place where Millie is Asian and it's all Asians and we're the minority. And we've lived in Arkansas where our white kids, were majority at their school, and the others weren't. And now we're here in Kenya where, lo and behold, the Kenyans can't tell our Haitians, that they're different from them. So it's been really sweet how we've kind of been able to be in a place where everybody's had a time in life where they feel like they're in the majority.
Yeah.
And the rest of the family is minority. So I don't have any bad things to share. I think I have some funny stories. There were some places in China that we went that were, in villages and things where they had never seen another white person. And so adopting was kind of a totally new thing to them. And we've had comments that would just blow you away. Like, what in the world? Why is your daughter Chinese and you're white? And, I'd say, we've been living in China so long that the last one just came out Chinese. And I'm like, oh, yeah, makes sense. Just have a lot of funny stories. But for the most part, I think we haven't had any hardships. We haven't been in America during some of the hardest years, which I think have been recently. So I don't know how all that would go. But I do feel like since we've started this adoption process, we knew nobody who had adopted when we first had Millie. And now it's hard to find any of our close friends around here, in the missions community that don't have at least an adopted child. And they're often from somewhere else. So it feels very normal to my kids. They feel very normalized here, and lots of adopted kids. And it hasn't been a big deal.
That's really, really, really awesome. Yeah, that's great. How have your kids, did they see any difference, or did they even notice at all?
Oh, of course they do. I mean, my daughter, my youngest, who's from Haiti, her hair is like the bane of my existence. And but I found culturally, that's one way that in that culture, you can't just show up at the grocery store with your kid with bedhead and pajamas on. That would be, like I would with my Emma. But if I did that with Livy, she would just look like a totally unloved child. That is showing love to your child. You need to keep that hair nice and done. And it's a tough job.
Yeah.
It's hard to, so, we try to do things that aren't going to upset or cause a lot of differences among where we are, especially here in Kenya. I always keep her hair as nice as possible. But they don't, I think my husband's really good about humor. That's helped us in a million situations, but it just lessens any kind of tensions or feeling weird when we make it weird. We joke about things. We often make our racial differences a funny thing in a way that, yes, we all belong. We're all in the same family, but we're not going to make you feel weird. Like, you don't have to pretend that you're not Asian or that you're more, don't be afraid to, if you want to hip hop and do these things that culturally we think are more, go for it. It's kind of in your blood. You do dance that way, and it's awesome,
Yeah. So just celebrating those cultures, I think that's becoming a lot more important in the adoptive community. And I think that that's great that just comes super naturally to you guys.
Yeah. So that's been fun. I don't think that there's been many hardships. Of course, none of our adopted kids have gone through puberty yet. And, going through that with our 3 biological kids recently, it's like, oh, great. That was tough. That was tough, and we're still in it. So we'll see. But right now, I think they all are pretty confident. The 3 youngest are pretty confident in who they are. So,
that's so great. And what a blessing that you guys have lived. I mean, here in America, the past couple of years especially have been pretty tense in the racial department. I'm sure you guys have caught wind of that over in Kenya, but what a blessing that during these formative years you guys have not been here with your Black children.
Right. I think about that, but I do think, I do know a lot of families that do have multiracial families in America, and I have to remember not to get caught up in what media is saying. I don't think they're overwhelmed or like anything's changed in their neck of the woods. People are loving, people are accepting for the most part.
Oh, and that's so great. That's so great to hear, and very encouraging to people considering walking this path. Okay, so the next kind of thing that I wanted to ask you about, and whenever we were first even thinking about adoption, we asked you and Casey to go to dinner with us and just asked about some attachment things because we wanted to adopt older kids, and none of your kids have been, I'm sorry, when you met Livy, she was a baby, but when you brought her home, she was not really a baby. So I know that international adoption and attachment, there are books and books and books and books and books written about this. So what were your experiences with attachment, and just the hardships that come with that?
Yeah, I think it was actually harder with our first one, with Millie. For whatever reason, she attached to me and nobody else for the longest time. And like I said, it wasn't really an attachment. It was more of a fear that she clung to me so much. But I think if I had any advice to give, it would just be to... some of those books that you read were scary, and they are worst case scenario, a lot of them. And I had to come to a point where I stopped reading. The Connect Each Other, there's some great books out there, but there's also some really harsh ones that are clinical, and they're kind of the worst case scenario. And someone who's, a mom who's broken and just trying to do her best, and they're not healthy to read, when you're in a hard time and wanting to do the best you can, take the good advice from good books that people have highly recommended, and don't on your own find anything out there. But for Millie, it just took time. And I think it was really helpful when we were going through it the second time around to just show so much more grace. I think for my husband especially, being like, okay, it took about a year till Millie, let me hold her hand. It took 2 years until I felt like we were on this level, and so with the next 2, he just thought, just don't sweat it. You can't force love on either side. You just can't. And you got to show yourself grace. They deserve the best, but you also deserve a lot of grace too. You're trying. You're doing what you can, and don't beat yourself up. We're all gonna get there, and we're all gonna make mistakes along the way.
Yeah. So I'm hearing a couple of themes, and the first one is patience. We've talked about that a lot, just waiting. And then now we're talking about waiting for that attachment and not trying to force it. And I do think that that's such good advice. But then also, just giving grace to the situation, and not relying on what someone else says about your family, and putting those feelers out and deciding how things are going to go. And I think that, that's something we learned even in domestic adoption just that, I'm kind of the same way. I've started to read a lot of books and I'm like, this just doesn't make me feel good about the situation. And a lot of times I'll quit reading it because I'm like, I would rather this just be me and God and, Brian, obviously, and the people that love us and know our situation rather than depending on the structure that someone, who lives across the country talks about. Is that kind of something you would agree with?
Yes, I think just being away from the books that are kind of, like I said, worst case scenario, clinical books, all the ones that give you great tips on attachment and, abandonment issues and whatsoever and how you can help them is great. But ones that, I think there was just 2 that I read that were just really harsh. And I thought, I don't want to ever recommend anything like this to any adopted mom because it's unfair to have that projection with a child before that child even has a chance to grow and change, and for you can't project on them how this is all going to turn out because of their adoption issues, because of their abandonment issues, because of their attachment issues. We just have to do day to day what we can and not have fear that they're going to turn out this way or this isn't going to work and they're going to be that kid that I read about in the book or this is going to happen. No, we don't know. Only God knows that child.
Yeah, that's great. And I feel like you're talking about expectations on a completely different level than what we've talked about on this podcast, because I've suggested not to have expectations because I had them in the opposite way. Instead of thinking that everything was going to be scary or bad, I, naively was like, oh, with enough love and structure, we'll get through this and it'll be, whatever. And it was just completely drowned me in how difficult it was. And you're saying, I feel like a lot of people on the international adoption side are like, it's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done in your entire life. And it might be, but you're saying not to have expectations the other way and that it's going to be way harder than it might not actually be that hard. Or maybe not hard, but hard in the way that they say it's going to be.
Right. And I don't mean it will be hard. We can't get around that. It's going to be hard for everybody. But at the same time, I think about like with my first, I just remember so many times just, and I didn't know any other adopted families at the time. I just remember bawling with a friend one time thinking, oh my gosh, are things ever going to change? Or is she ever going to feel loved? Is she ever going to know that I really love her? Or, is this ever going to happen? And with her and her dad, with, her really feeling secure here to where we can be normal. We can be a normal family.
Yeah.
and
that's all we want.
Yeah. There was just so much depression. Like, I'm just, we're just going to work this out for the rest of our lives. It's just what we're called to do, but then by the time the next ones come around, we had some even scarier. I mean, Bluxon was 4 years old, and the first thing that he kind of did that was really alarming was, when he'd get in trouble or felt like he wasn't pleasing us and we'd have to scold him, he would space out and look to the sky and literally just zone out like a seizure almost, and drooling, everything, just out in the middle of nowhere and not respond to anything for I know, scary stuff, right? But at the time, after going through so much with Millie and seeing, in God's timing and how things work out, it wasn't quite as scary. I wasn't in that place where I'm like, oh, this means this, and this is just, we just got to love him through it. The rest of our lives are going to be like this. He's never going to attach. He's never going to understand. And, it was just easier to chill a little bit and be like, yep, this is hard, and it's really hard for him. It's hard for us, but it's really hard for him. And we're all going to get through this. You just need to chill and take it one thing at a time, not get overwhelmed by the fear, I should say.
That is such a good piece of advice. And it's so simple. Don't get overwhelmed by the fear.
Yeah.
So I had put on here to talk about what adoption looks like in regards to missionary work, but I feel like we've already address that. And I know that leaving furlough for your older kids was really difficult, but your family seems to really embrace just the cultural differences and just the changes, I guess, that come with with you guys being missionaries. And, I mean, but what are some of the harder things that you've been through, especially with your adoptive kids?
With moving?
Yes, with moving and just living in different countries and culture shock, maybe.
Yeah. Let me think. Honestly, they were the easy ones on this move. My 3 teens, my biological kids that really struggled. But let's see.
And it's totally okay if you don't have anything. I just didn't, I know that a lot of people listening are probably not missionaries, but I think that mainly I was wondering just if that culture stuff had put any strain on your family. Just your family looks so different already, and then you're moving to places where maybe they haven't seen a lot of that. But
okay. Yeah, I really can't think of anything. The only thing I can think of would be positive. I mean, we've seen a lot of, just by seeing that it's possible, it's kind of a big thing, and it has been for a while, which is super awesome, that adoption is becoming such a big thing in America. But it's not like that in a lot of other countries still. And so being in a place like China where, it take us forever and so much trouble to adopt, whereas, we meet Chinese every day. They're like, what is this? They've never heard of it. They don't know, why would you do that? They don't understand it. And then as they get to know us and being believers, and it becomes more normal. And we've just seen so many other Chinese families that have adopted. It's much easier for them, so much easier in your own local country to adopt. So we've seen such a good positive effect that that it has on just kind of spreading the love of adoption and making it more normal. And same thing here in Kenya, it just closed. And so Americans aren't able to adopt here anymore, but, the Kenyans can. So all these little babies that, we have all these little areas with kind of, you can foster out kids. And so a lot of missionaries will take in a baby for a weekend or do, just little things here and there. But the Kenyans, are seeing this and being like, but I can still adopt. This is something I can do. And it's just becoming more normal, I think I should say. It seems more normal when they see it. It's been a very positive thing. Yeah. Culturally.
Oh, that's amazing to hear. I love that. I love that because I feel like in our tiny little American box that we like to put ourselves in, we think of adoption as a very American thing. And so it's just great to hear that it's not.
Right. It's almost even sweeter when you see, a Kenyan family, like, oh my goodness, we can adopt right here. And it's a Kenyan baby, same culture. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I kind of have some little closing questions, and you can take as much time to answer them as you need. I didn't want you to think it had to be like a quick answer type thing, but so, what do you wish that someone had just looked you in the eye and told you at the beginning of this journey and just made you believe it?
I wish, let me think, that they would have said, like we've been talking about so much, just patience. It takes time. It just takes time, and chill out, Don't let the fear overwhelm you. And I would also say don't project along with that. Don't project their future. When you're caught up in those fearful moments, or you're like, this is just like the book I read. She's doing this, and this means this, and, she's got these issues. Don't project their future from there, because we have no idea what God has in store. We can't even name what's going to happen tomorrow with any of our children. But that's where I kind of have found for myself, I've had to learn through years and years and years of having kids that's what I did so much when they were younger. And not just with the adopted kids, but with all the kids. Something would happen, and I project from something I read, or I just project their future, how it's going to be for both of us, our whole family from now on out, And it's not like that. So I just wish someone would have said, just chill out. It's a season. Things are seasons. Some things will last, but they'll change. You'll change. They'll change.
Oh, that's so good to hear, because I am in that season. So it's a struggle every day to not just be like, this is what my life looks like now forever and ever. This is just what it's going to be.
Well, you got 3 babies and a teen, so.
Good gosh. Pray for me, please.
We do.
My house is just never clean ever. So, okay. So what is something you wish you had done differently? And maybe I know that you said that you wish you'd chilled out, but is there something even more specific than that you wish you had done differently along the way?
Thinking about this question, I really don't. All the mistakes, we're all going to make mistakes, but I think that's part of it. I don't want to pinpoint something. There is something that just shines up in my brain, like the worst parenting moment I ever had, and I'll share it if you want me to. You'll think I'm a total fail, but it may make your listeners feel better.
Please, you will not seem like a total fail. I love it. Tell us.
I'm here with, abandonment issues and all that thing and everything you've learned and everything I've read, so with Millie, she was, needing my constant attention, like I said, and, but she was also a perfect child. She was on that scale. Some of them rebel to get your attention and know that you still love them. And some of them are absolutely perfect to know that you love them. They don't want to upset you. They don't want to get up because they don't want to be pushed out. They don't want to lose their place, lose your love. It's what they're thinking, at least. And so I had that. That was my sweet Millie. She was the most obedient, sweet child. And it only happened like twice a year, honestly, that she would do something that I'd have to reprimand her on because she tried so hard to be perfect. I wanted her to fail so that she could see over and over again that this is unconditional, babe. I love you. You can't lose my love, ever. But that was a really hard thing for her. So when she did, I had to be very careful, be like, okay, I'm as gently as I can. I have to let her know that this is wrong. I wouldn't let another child lie and get away with it. I have to. So in those moments, I would reprimand her as gently as I could, try to say all the right things. I love you, but this is something we need to work on. Let's try this together. But the moment she felt like she did something wrong, it was like all hell broke loose, and it was a trauma. It just hit a trauma, and she would cry inconsolably, screaming, yelling. And if you know my sweet Millie, this is nothing like her. It's like someone had taken over her. She doesn't cry. She doesn't get, emotional at all. And so these few times were just so out of the ordinary, but she'd be inconsolable and there's nothing you could do. And so we tried forever and try to calm her down and love her and do all the right things. Okay, we're supposed to be with her. We'll just keep telling her it's okay. But there was times when I just, we were in a hotel at this particular instant. I think there was twice when I failed in one of these and they were so bad, but we were in a hotel and there was other families around and she was keeping everybody awake. And so I was at the end of my rope. Like I've done everything that I'm supposed to do. I'm with her. I'm holding her. I can't anymore. She's waking everybody up. So I told her, you know what, you keep crying and we have to put you somewhere else. Got to the point where I'm threatened to, if you just can't calm down, we're going to put you in the bathroom because we're in a hotel and there's nowhere, and you're waking everybody up. And we did. I ended up making a nice soft bed in the bathtub, trying to tell her, I'm not leaving you. I'm right here by the door, but we can't do this. But, I don't know. I feel like that was how I just locked her in a bathroom. So there you have it. My little girl with abandonment issues, I separated her and let her scream it out by herself in the bathroom because I couldn't take it anymore. And I felt like all the other kids couldn't take it anymore. And so, things like that. But then again, I come back to, I don't know what to do. I was doing the best I could at the time. I'd read all the books. I was trying to do the best. And I know that, I would say in retrospect, never talking about that again would have been a mistake, Yeah. So as she's gotten older, talking about all the mistakes I've made has been good. Like, oh, goodness, I've never gotten over this time. Will you forgive me? I didn't know what to do. Now that she's older and more able to handle things. But even when she was young, when I felt like I crossed the line or wasn't quite, just talking about it was good. So all that to say, I wouldn't do a whole lot differently because I want to believe that, moms, we're trying to do the best we can. And we don't want to beat ourselves up, or we're not going to be good moms. A mom full of guilt is not a good mom.
Yeah. And there's so much good advice in just what you just said about, especially not just covering it up and not talking about it. That's so important, because I know that I've made mistakes before, and it's so awkward, but I've had to just be like, do you remember when I was super appalled at how much you ate when you first got here? Just little stuff like that. They're just like, right. I'm really sorry. I didn't know how to handle that, and I hope I'm doing better now. But it's so hard, because as parents, you're like, maybe if we just don't talk about it, it'll just go away. So that's great advice, Mandi.
Right. Yes.
Okay. So what is your favorite way that, and obviously your situation's a little different because your tribe changed a lot, but obviously your home tribe wasn't around for a lot of it. But what's your favorite way that your tribe supported you? And then what is maybe a way that they, that you felt not supported, just a comment or something that was, meant well, but made you feel not good?
I could say my tribe has been very supportive. I think the best thing, the meals, all that has been fabulous, and having support is huge. But I think what I've remembered most is when my family has totally unintentionally, but it's spoken to me, made my kids feel like Morgans. So, for instance, Millie, she's named after my mom, Millie. And my mom is just the most talkative, sanguine, never met a stranger. She's out there. She's not thinking about what she says. She's a, verbal processor. And then here's Millie, who is also a verbal processor, but more was talking out of fear, of wanting your attention. But my mom totally saw that as, she's just like me. She's just like her namesake, everything about it, and just loves that. She loves that she's so talkative, and really makes her feel like she's, you're just like your grandma. Well, that's because you're a Millie, and then the same thing with Luck and Live. There's just, well, my family a little bit, and we're a little offbeat, and some of our boys and their father are just on the silly, crazy side.
Yeah, so, taking pictures of you guys was a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's no shy kids in this bunch. So, and no one that doesn't want attention, I should say that. But yeah, so when the younger two, the littlest is just as sassy as she could be, and people will say things like, or their aunt especially is just like, oh my goodness, they're such Morgans, but that speaks to me. That makes them, because I know in their heart, it makes them feel like they belong more. Like, this is our tribe. We are Morgans, and we belong in this family. This was meant to be. God designed it that way. We may all look different, but we fit. We totally fit. And I think they don't do this intentionally, but they say it all the time, and I love it.
Oh, that's awesome. I haven't gotten that answer yet, and so I love having that. So was there a way that maybe it was some unintentional hurt or anything like that? And I asked that question not to shame anyone, but I know that I have a lot of support system people listening, and I want them to know what does hurt and what doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of hesitant because there's only one little comment I can think of. And like you said, it was totally unintentional. It was by a family member. And it was when we were already totally in it, in the adoption process with the last two. And this person said, Mandi, I just wanted you to really double think about this. You're about to have teens, and I don't think you know what a whirlwind you're getting into. And you don't want your time to be spread, to be thinned out by having this new adoption and all these things happening when your teens are really going to need you. At the time, our kids were just about to be in middle school and start on that path, the top three. And, she was right. We had no idea some of the things that have come about since high school and middle school. But she was right about that. But at the same time, it really hurt because I felt, when your family has felt so strongly that God's leading you toward this, and then someone says, I don't think you're making a good decision.
Yeah.
I don't think you've thought this through. It was hurtful, I should say.
Yeah.
It didn't stop us. And, I took that advice and was like, thank you. I'm glad that you're looking out for me. But I just know that we can't say no. When God says yes, we can't say no, you know?
Yeah.
So that's where that went. And yes, this has been a tough season. She was right. And we had no idea. You know, we have had some crazy things happen, but I wouldn't say that adoption has made it any worse or anything. It's only been part of our family growing, and this is where we are now. I don't think it's had any bearing on that whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, and you know, a lot of times, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, but a lot of times we wouldn't want to know the future. You know, I bet you probably wouldn't have wanted to know how hard it was going to be, because then you might have said no to something that's been so great for your family.
Right. And I think I know people aren't looking into that family specifically. Like, does she even know how long we've prayed about this and thought about this and really felt led by God? You know, like, does she even know? We don't know what that family's been through that's led them to this point in adoption. And so don't hinder them from it, I would say.
Yeah. Oh, that's good advice. Okay. So what's your biggest encouragement to, you know, so as a mom that's in a similar situation to you, maybe they've adopted internationally and they don't know what has possessed this child to freak out like this, or, you know, whatever those difficulties look like, what encouragement would you give her?
Well, I would say just don't feel guilty about feelings that aren't there yet. You know,
oh, that's good.
Yes, this child deserves every bit of everything you've learned and read in those books. This child deserves that, you know, and do it. But don't feel bad that the feelings aren't coming with it, because they will. Just, you know, be okay that you're doing the best you can and that you're loving that child and showing them what they need, but don't feel guilty about all the feelings on your part, you know, that you can't make happen.
Oh, and that's good advice for any adoption, because I know for me, I just thought I would love him immediately, and that didn't happen, of course. So I thought I was doing something wrong. So, that's good to hear. So, okay, so where can we follow your family's adventures on social media or anything like that?
Well, my husband is, you know, after being in China, he's scarred for life. He doesn't want his presence anywhere. You can't find him anywhere. He makes sure of it. But I have a Facebook account, so you can find me, Mandi Morgan, on Facebook.
That's Mandi with a Y, right?
Mandi with an I, M-A-N-D-I.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Get my Mandis mixed up. Sorry.
Well, they're usually with a Y, so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, awesome. And I'm so grateful that you came on. I know that there was a huge time difference, so I'm super appreciative of us being able to make it work.
Well, me too. Always fun to talk to you guys.
Yeah, for sure. We miss you guys, and we hope that we'll see you on a visit soon. But thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
You're so welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Adoptive Mom Podcast. I know this stuff is hard, and I hope you found encouragement here. Remember, you are enough, and you're doing a great job. God wants to be at the center of this journey, and He is big enough to redeem all of our mistakes. Don't forget to check out show notes and other resources at theadoptivemompodcast.com. Thanks again for listening.